furgals.
All right, welcome to episode number 208 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We're recording on July the 9th, 2023. My name is Eric, host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and of course, computer geek. As a first responder, witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events and started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
So I'm the Frugal Gunny. I recently moved to Northern Ontario, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. I'm an off-gridder, a shooter, a hunter, fisher, gatherer, trapper type, and a bit of a generalist. It's only recently that I came to accept that I'm a prepper.
Well, there we go. I think everyone's noticed that Jeff isn't here. Something to do with Fireball and the hunt camp last night. That's what we're going to blame it on anyways. He'll tell you his microphone's not working. Don't believe him. If you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy some swag. We've got the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch available at prepperpodcast.ca. All the proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. Also, we will really want your feedback, whether it's good or bad, or just if there's a topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
You read that so much better than Pierre. All right. We've got some twisted content for you in this episode. We're going to start off with some recent news. We'll update you on our personal preps, and then we're going to get into the main topic. And we're talking cabin evac and tornadoes this evening. It's assuming Jeff shows up, that is.
That's right.
All right. So, as far as news goes, I'm pretty sure everybody has noticed over the last, what was our last episode? About 2 weeks ago now, the air quality sucked. There has been a lot of smoke everywhere. So, that's something that we're going to get into here in this episode. And we're talking about cabin evac because it's directly related. But there has been a lot of smoke in the air and there's been a lot of cancellations of things. And I can't remember a time that there's been this thick of a smoke in the air that hasn't been caused by a close or nearby fire.
Me either. It was pretty intense.
Yeah,
and pretty stinky at times, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got rotten eggs there at one point from it.
Yeah, never had a normal fire smelling like that before. So
no, I've had some things smell like rotten eggs, but not fired. Oh.
Yeah. So. Burnt plastic in my case.
Oh yes, yep. But with that, let's move on to what we've done lately for preps. So myself, I know this one's going to be shocking. I got the radio out, portable. So like I mentioned, we were at the hunt camp over the last couple of days. So I made a few contacts, and probably the coolest one that we got was Wake Island. I was only operating on 10 watts because I didn't bring my battery pack for my amplifier. And Wake Island is in the middle of freaking nowhere.
It is pretty impressive, folks. You got to go look up where Wake Island is.
Yeah, Google it. I was very happy with that. Jeff was with me, and we kind of shook our heads and went, wait a minute, he can hear us?
Yep.
Well, all right.
If you hit Wake Island on Google Earth and just watch the globe spin around until it gets to where you need to be, and that's cool in itself. That
was pretty neat. We kind of lucked out. There was a contest going on the weekend, so we hopped in there and was able to get in and make a few contacts. There's tons and tons of people operating, so tons of people listening too, and figured, let's see what we can do here. And it was literally just a wire up in the tree, and then the radio sitting on the cooler, and away we went. So,
and you hit that with 10 watts, right?
10 watts. Yep.
Wow.
So we were pretty happy with that. So
that is impressive.
Yeah. And then beyond that, finally bit the bullet on some reloading gear. So with the
fantastic.
So with the advice of Frugal there, made a purchase, and now we get to see if I can figure out how to make it all work without blowing myself up.
Oh, this makes me happy to hear.
So I've been eyeing that stuff up for quite some time, and with getting back into the range routine here over the last couple of weeks, I figured it's time. And there happen to be some applicable sales on, so it's almost like they knew I was coming. So
it's definitely the way to get into it. If I had to say which cartridge to start with, I would start with a nice, easy, straight wall pistol cartridge first, and then work your way to rifle, which is a little bit more brass prep.
Yeah, I grabbed 9mm and 308. So I got the
Great
dies for that.
choices.
So
Great choices for reloading. Those are the ones I started with as well. So
perfect. I'm going to be
you
picking your
can't go
brain for a
wrong there.
while.
Yes. And it's quite a rabbit hole. So
I've
welcome.
noticed.
Welcome.
It's
Let
just
me
when
know
you another hobby full of rabbit holes.
Oh yes, and if you ever need me to poke through any of my books, let me know. That's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah,
Sounds
I
good.
enjoy getting other people into different cartridges and bullets.
I foresee another reloading episode in our future. We did one quite a while ago. I foresee another one coming up.
That would be another great fun rabbit hole. I'm sure we'd have lots of people joining in for that one as well.
I'm sure we would.
Yeah.
All right. What have you done lately?
So on my end, I'm still looking out there for my next gig. So I ran into a couple of interviews, filling out lots of forms, doing security clearance stuff. Other than that, I've been dealing with forest fire stuff. So we did an evacuation of my cabin because there is still, according to the maps, and I just checked tonight just before logging on here to see if I was full of it or not, and there is still a fire showing about less than 50 kilometers as the crow flies from my cabin.
That is a fantastic segue into the main topic of this evening's episode.
I thought so as well, yes. Other than that, I've been helping a friend plan out his solar install. And so I'm kind of excited to help him out with that, seeing as I've now done it a couple of times. So it's kind of fun to help somebody else with it too.
Nice. We've got Terry in the live chat just commenting on reloading. Is reloading one of the many paths to poverty? That's awesome because ham radio leads there too. Great.
Yes. Let's acknowledge everybody that if you get into reloading, you're not going to save money. You're just going to maybe shoot a bit more for the money you're spending once you're done developing. But you may run into all kinds of rabbit holes on the way there, and I can't be held responsible for those.
Bring on the rabbit holes.
That's right. Thanks for joining, Terry.
So like you mentioned, with the whole forest fire things and a fire being about 50K from your cabin as the crow flies, we figured we would do an episode on just debriefing because you and a couple of the other panelists did make a run to take your stuff out of the cabin and get everything back away from the fires. And we thought it'd be a great opportunity to just chat with you about what went right, what went wrong, what kind of fell in the middle, and lessons learned. And I'm sure we can all learn from the experiences. I know it all came together rather quickly. Yes, and it was kind of fun to watch it unfold in the chats. Me sitting here going, I can't go and help out because by the time I get up there to help, you'll have already been there and back. But it was nice to see the group kind of get together and get rolling, and kind of interested to hear exactly how things unfolded and lessons that were learned.
It was a great example of people coming together quickly, and everybody had a part to play and pitched in, and it was amazing. I literally, we did 2 trips up north in 1 week, in less than 1 week. We went up, I believe it was on a Tuesday, and that one was really rushed because the fires were just popping up everywhere. That was really out of control in a lot of places. The smoke was very, very thick. And so we were watching the environmentals very closely. And I see that some of our crew are listening in, so it's great. We were watching very closely the fire situation, and I was making plans to go up there by myself because I don't like dragging other people into my insanity. So I have a tendency to go alone on a lot of these missions that I give myself and set for myself. And Pierre and Melissa just kind of dove in and said, "Hey, how can we help?" And I just felt like, oh my God, I can't believe anybody would actually want to come up with me to drive up 7 hours. Because 7 hours drive, let's just admit that in itself is a grueling thing.
Especially with you in a vehicle.
Especially with me, I tend to push my poor little truck to limits that, I don't know, let's just say that I can attest to the legendary toughness of the Tacoma.
Fair enough.
I overloaded that poor little thing, and Melissa and Pierre helped me out. So we basically got everything together really quickly. I don't think we had the trailer on the first run. I believe that was on. No, I do believe I did have the trailer on. Oh man, I'm starting to forget already. Isn't that terrible? No, I think I went back for the ATV on the second run. So the first run we went up, it was getting up there very quickly. We used my ATV, packed a lot of my things out of there really quickly. We drove up pretty much nonstop on the first run. I had my girlfriend with me. Pierre and Melissa were in their truck, and we pushed pretty hard to get up there. And once we got there, they walked in with me and got to see the cabin. Helped me get some of the things out of the cabin, loading them into my little trailer, because I have a little utility trailer. It's a little beaten up, but it's definitely doing the job. And we used my ATV to ferry all of the contents. So we had tools, we had reloading supplies, we had a couple of firearms in there, I had clothing, ammunition, all kinds of electronics. So my spare batteries, a lot of the supplies I needed to make my mobile battery pack, all the tools for that. So a whole ton of stuff came out, and they had brought some bins along. Hey, it was very cool. I want to give a shout out to Darius, who was keeping us up to date on the fire reports and the smoke reports as we were making our way up there. Jeff was giving us the weather reports, keeping us appraised on that. We got up there, though. The smoke was hard on the face. It was hard on the eyes. Darius had given us some great tips to have lots of water with us. And man, did I ever drink a ton of water after coming back from out there. My eyes were very, very dry. Just being around in a smoky environment, for those of you who haven't done it before, definitely that was the biggest tip. Have lots of water on hand. Give us some tips also on not wearing cotton, because apparently cotton will ignite. So
that could be an issue.
Yeah, that could be an issue. The one concern that I had about bringing other people up there with me is that we're about a kilometer. My cabin is about a kilometer from the main road. So if fire was to take, it's a fairly narrow trail. There's a really strong possibility we would not be able to get out, and we could have our way blocked by flames.
Right.
And so I had a bit of a sense of urgency about the entire affair. We didn't want to stay any longer than we had to. And I believe we were there not much longer than 2.5 hours. Just basically getting everything out of there and then strapping it and loaded into the truck as best as we could. And we got out of there and burned our way all the way back down. It was quite a trip. It was really amazing. Crash landed back into the area between Moose Creek and Ottawa, and distributed my stuff to the four corners between my friends. And then I decided I was going to go back up on my own to try and get an ATV out of there. And Pierre offered to come up and help so that we could get both ATVs out of there. And so I rented a trailer for this particular second venture.
Right.
And we decided to go up there. And while we were there with the trailer and the ATVs, to try and bring back whatever else we could that would be of value, because there were still a few things remaining. Not a lot, but I was hoping to get at least the ATVs out. So managed to find a trailer, made my way up there with Pierre. One thing that I did forget, what did go wrong, because friends, when you're running really fast and crazy, there's no such thing as perfection, right? But the faster things are, the less perfect it's going to be. I think we can all acknowledge that, right? So what did I forget? The most important thing that I normally am very attached to bringing is jerry cans. And why was that a factor? Because my truck burned way more fuel than it normally did pulling that U-Haul trailer out there. It was a 2,300-pound trailer. And so my little V6 truck ended up consuming most of its tank of gas by the time we were in Mattawa. And so we had to stop because it was 1 a.m. and there are no gas stations open that late in Mattawa. So the one thing that went wrong, that I can say went wrong, was on my end, forgot my jerry cans. Right. Otherwise, almost everything we could have needed to survive and make do for extended periods, we already had in the vehicle.
That's interesting. That's the one thing that went wrong, and not something you would necessarily think to plan for ahead of time. Because why would you be renting a trailer to get your ATVs out that I presume stay there all year round, anyways, right? So that's an interesting angle to. Now you got to add that to your list. Everyone that's listening, if you got a remote cabin, think about trailering things out and what that's going to add to your trip.
Yeah, and also consider the time of the day. There's a reason I normally have those jerry cans, and that's because I enjoyed driving and traveling at night. Driving and traveling at night, there's a lot less trucks. There's a lot less touristy people on the road. There's a lot less Sunday drivers on the road at night.
It's a lot less of everything.
A lot less of everything. You have a little bit more wildlife.
I was going to say, there's that. Yep.
But otherwise, I've enjoyed driving at night myself, and I find it less stressful. But the downside is that when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you may not have the fuel you need when you need it.
Yep.
And so this is what happened to me this time, because my fuel consumption pattern changed because I was dragging a big trailer behind me, and I hadn't had to do that before. And so we got up there, though, and we were able to get everything out. And I see Melissa making a fantastic comment here. Let's mention some of these things, because this is good stuff here. She's reminding me of. There was we had our lights on we had our headlamps on because we got up there in the dark, and it was starting to get dark, and we could see there was some sort of like snow in the air, except it wasn't snow. This was ash. It was ash falling down. And so we could see that it was pretty thick as we were starting to leave. And I remember Melissa being down there going, okay, I don't know what to grab. And that's exactly it. If you don't have your stuff ready to go already in containers, and you're moving things in a rush, there's going to be a time delay while you're containering it, because you can't walk out with, hands. I'm using my hands to describe something here for those of our friends who are listening in. The average tool or a box or something, it fits in the hand. But if you have 24 of these things to pack away, well, you need bins, you need bags. And if you've got friends coming to help you move those things and you're doing it in a rush, you kind of have to move quickly in these kinds of conditions. And so we were just trying to grab what we could and throw it in. But I remember both my girlfriend and Melissa looking around going, oh, geez, I don't know what to grab. I don't know what to do for you. And I remember at one point I went up to the loft and we were just relaying things down the stairs. And I think that was fun, because it felt like we were moving things and everybody was helping to move things along. So that was really cool.
It gives everybody a job, right? Makes them feel like they're contributing.
It does. Yep. It does. And it was so much help. And Melissa also mentioned that Pierre just about fell asleep behind the wheel. Yes. When you are moving in a convoy, it's good to know and have and work with the buddy system. Yep. This happened to me when I was in the military. It's very easy to fall asleep when you've got this white noise. And white noise, man, just off-road tires on pavement. There's some white noise right there, the droning of the motor. You add fatigue in there, and it's really easy to nod off. And so having your co-pilot there who can nudge you and say, hey, I'm taking over here, or hey, roll the windows down, let's crank some music up, punch you in the arm or something like that.
Or just, hey, wake up.
Snap out of it, right?
Yep.
So that was always the big challenge in this run. And for anybody contemplating rescue missions of this kind, in our case, when Pierre and I ran into the fuel wall in Mattawa, it gave us an actual opportunity to get some shut-eye so
Right.
that we could get up there, load, and then boogie on back without having to take a longer break while up there.
Awesome.
So, yes.
So let's rewind for a second here and paint the
Please.
picture of why we're running up there so quickly all of a sudden. What transpires there? We go from, we're chatting about the fires that are happening because everybody's talking about that time. It's weird that there's all this smoke everywhere. We kind of alluded to that in the news section of this episode. And then all of a sudden the chat just lights up. And for those listening, we've got a little panelist chat where we are all chatting and talking about various things amongst each other all the time. And some of it is things like this where we're helping each other out. And all of a sudden there's this flurry of messages and chat and all of a sudden this plan's coming together. Why was it such a rush all of a sudden? What happened?
All right. So that's probably the best question of all so far. I didn't pay a lot of money out for this cabin, but when this whole pandemic business hit, I moved all of my contents up there because I figured, okay, I'm going to have to live off the land and survive up there. And so it turns out that I had more value up there than I had up there in items stored in the cabin than I actually had paid out for the cabin and the land itself. And so while looking at this fire situation, the smoke situation, all that kept rolling through my poor mind was a very frank discussion I had with one of the locals who explained to me that the local firefighters have a nickname, and it's a rather unfortunate one because it's a volunteer firefighter department, and they're basically all living in the middle of nowhere, similar to me. Mm-hmm. And so they don't necessarily have the response times you're going to see in the city. And so they have a very unfortunate nickname. They're called the basement savers. And so this implies that by the time they get to your place, they'll help you save your basement. And so that was always on my mind the entire time. And I remember thinking, do I want to get back up there and not have anything left at all? And so I was weighing the cost of getting everything up there and managing to find a way to do so versus potentially losing it and having to one day replace it. And that's when Pierre and Melissa all volunteered to help. And all of a sudden it became a possibility to get a lot more than I thought I was ever going to get up by myself.
Awesome. How close were the fires at the point we all the chat kind of started to spin up and you guys started making plans?
Well, there were great question again. There were 2 fires that were in less than 100 kilometers of a radius of my cabin. So there was one fire that was, I believe it was west of Kirkland Lake. There was another one burning slightly north of Kirkland Lake. And so I guess this was 3 fires nearby. And then there was that one near New Liskeard, which is about, again, another 40 to 50K as the crow flies. So knowing how embers move in the wind and how dry the conditions were once we were up there, because I hadn't set foot up there in a couple of months when we did get up there. And when we were shuffling things in and out of there, I remember noting how dry the ground was. So this is significant because my land is wetlands. The water table is very high. There's normally a creek running constantly. And unfortunately, that creek was dry. The road was completely dry. The soil was completely dry. And normally the water table there, very, very high. There's almost always mud. It's almost always difficult to get in and out through the main road. So this is what prompted me to get back there and to get the ATVs out, telling myself, well, if I can get the 2 ATVs out, at least I have one way to get my stuff in and out of there guaranteed when I go back up there. So that was the thinking behind going up there for the second run and saving the ATVs. And the reasoning also is that I could work on the other dead one while I was down here until the wildfire season subsided.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And just speaks to the fact that, some people would probably be thinking, 100K away. Why are we worried about a fire that's 100K away? You got to be worried about that fire because it's coming your way and it's coming quick.
Exactly.
Right? So it's
in a rural situation, friends, it's not like And it's even more than rural where we were. We're talking about northern bush, so it's this bushland. So you walk out, say less than half an hour drive of any small town up there, and you are literally in the deepest bush. Only people who live off the grid. A lot of Amish up there because there's no cell phone service. There's no electricity in a lot of these areas. So you really are in a remote area. And so there, if you combine the forest practices, the fact that we've had a lot of storms, so a lot of deadfall, this leaves a lot of fuel on the ground for a forest fire to pick up and take. And if you combine winds and, well, just that alone will do the job. But then if you start involving human behavior and the human factor in there, well, who knows where it can go, right?
Oh, it can go anywhere with the human factor.
It can go anywhere with the human factor. And I remember thinking, I don't think I could afford to replace all of that gear. And so I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to try and rescue what I can. And so that's how it all came together. And it was quite an accomplishment. So I got to give them a huge shout out again and a huge thank you. I'm now resting easy, even if I lost. And yes, thank you for that, David. It's absolutely right. It's a perfect example of what a MAGA, a mutual assistance group, can do for you. And you don't get one of these without reaching out to other people, right?
Exactly. Yep.
You have to reach out. And all I remember doing was just sharing with people, oh, geez, look at this. I'm going to have to head up there. And all of a sudden people want to come and join me. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know if who's crazier, me for going up or them for wanting to join in with me. But I was very grateful because it all worked out very, very well. And so
it was neat to see all the
to
see all the panelists come together, and even the ones that weren't local or able to pitch in physically were throwing all their intel and information into the chat group and helping you out with that. So it was really neat to see everybody just get their skill set in order and just focus on the mission and get you guys, either the ones that are physically going there and just get all the intel to you. It was kind of neat to watch that all unfold and almost completely unprompted.
Oh yeah,
it was really neat.
The level of coordination was really impressive. And it highlights actually something else that we harp on here on this podcast, and others elsewhere do too. It's about having communications channels, folks.
Yep.
100%. I would have liked to have more communications channels with my group during this time, seeing as we were in a zone where there was difficult cell access. So the one thing I would have liked to have for the next time is a CB kit, and of course a mobile ham setup. So those are going to be first front of mind for the next year or so. I want to work on some comms. So that was a huge proof of concept there, and having alternate comms. So yeah, a huge operation. It was very cool.
And where would you deploy that, just out of curiosity, since we're getting in the communications area?
Yeah. So the thing that we would benefit from is, seeing as we already have one or two in our group that do have a ham set up, is I would want one where I could deploy it and stage it up front somewhere before going into an operational area. So maybe I have a link, right? Because we know that our portable ham setups only have a certain amount of range. So we need to use repeaters. I was trying to look for the right word. We need to be able to set up repeaters. So given that I have a couple of Baofangs, and I can set myself up with a mobile ham system once I have my license, what I'm planning on doing is maybe seeing if I can use one of those Baofangs to make a mobile repeater that will work on my mobile power pack, something that I could pre-stage up front, so that we could have comms that could reach into those harder areas, but also have ham to have the ability to connect with a base station, and then have an even better, longer range of operations and comms. You said you were able to reach Wake Island with 10 watts.
That was all propagation.
That's really impressive. I mean, I know you've got weather and environmentals are a huge part of it, right? But
Yeah, that was
That's
luck.
if
But it's
anything
doable.
proves the
Yep.
concept, right?
Yep. Yeah, and that's all HF, right? So the stuff you're talking there with repeaters and stuff would all be like VHF, UHF type of communications with the bell
Okay.
fangs and such.
All right.
But still, yeah, that could work. And
So
doing a little mobile repeater setup could be a thing too.
it would be about having alternate methods to
Yep.
communicate, because when those cell towers go down,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very real thing. Cell towers do go down, and we could probably do an episode alone on the cell infrastructure.
I think we did around the time Rogers kicked the bucket for a day or two.
Oh, great timing. Yes.
Yep.
So that's cell infrastructure. When it goes down, man, people panic, right? And in every main disaster, it's our ham radio operators that end up reestablishing comms the first.
Yep.
I think that speaks for itself, does it not?
It does. I could see that being useful. Like the fact you guys were able to get up to the cabin, keep comms with us in the little signal group there. If that goes down, have that as a backup form of communication to keep relaying that same information that we are relaying over the cell system. Like obviously path of least resistance, use the cell system if it's there, but always have a backup, right? So I like that. That's I think we're going to nerd out on some stuff later.
Oh yes, it's the entire. I call it an operation because it was we slammed it together pretty quickly.
It was fast,
and it was fast. And considering how fast it went, I'm surprised nothing really went wrong. Really, I don't call forgetting jerry cans really a major bobo.
That's the human element, like you said, right?
Absolutely, man.
People under pressure. That little thing, that little stuff's going to happen. Yep. You can't stop that.
No, you can't. Hey, we were well stocked for goodies to eat on the way up there.
There you go. Perfect.
We had everything else, so it went really, really well. And I want everybody out there to consider what they would do if they were in a similar situation. You know, what if you had to get yourself out, your family, just your stuff, right? Move it from one place to another. Knowing that we could do that as a group, and that I got friends who could join in with me in that time of need, it just cements it all that this is a survival technique and method that has worked forever and still does. We got good friends here that are there, and I'll be there for them anytime they need it, of course, as well.
Yep. Yeah, and Darius has a good point in the live chat here, and he says it's one of those events that connects many of the things that we've had episodes on together. Good to know that the systems we have in place work.
So true.
Yep.
You never know when you're going to need all these contingencies that we talk about, and all these emergency preparedness tips and tricks. You never know when you're going to need them. And what was odd is that by telling all of my friends at work what was happening, they learned a couple of things. Oh, geez, one of us lives up there out in the middle of the bush, because, you know, I do have work relations other than the friends that we have here in our signal group.
Right.
And telling them that I had to evacuate my gear, it brought it home. And there were other people in my working relations who also had to prepare to move in case there was fire, because they were in areas where there was fires nearby. And so I think there was a whole lot of this understanding across the country. A lot of people were facing these same thoughts and these same threats as I was. In fact, I think some lost a lot, you know, like, for example, in Nova Scotia, in Quebec, I know there was a lot of fires. I don't know how many people lost homes or anything like that, but there was a lot of stuff burning up out of control. So yes, not everybody saw this in Canada, but many did, and I don't think we've seen this much of it in the past at once.
There was a lot of fires going all at once. I can't remember a time where there's been like that thick smoke here that's blown from forest fires like hundreds of kilometers away, right? Like it's been consistent for like a good solid month, if not a bit longer.
Very much so.
Wild.
Very wild. So glad to know it all went and worked out. Had so much help. Yes, Darius here mentioning, from the time I first mentioned the issue to the time tires were on the road was less than 2 hours. It was very quick decision. I remember mentioning it I'm going to go up there. I'm going to do an all-nighter to get my stuff out and get back here. And everybody joined in to help. It was really amazing. It was really, really amazing.
Yeah, that gives everybody listening kind of an idea of the timeline that you guys are dealing with. Like I said, it was quick. It went from, there's some fires around to, no, there's really some fires around. This is close to, I'm getting my truck and going. And within, about, like Darius said there, within about 2 hours of that progression of, okay, this is bad to this. Okay, this is okay. Now we got to act. 2 hours and rubber on the road going. It happened quick.
Yeah, and I remember thinking long and hard about it because Pierre and Melissa were just throwing everything into the pile, saying, "Yeah, we're coming to help you." And I remember wondering, geez, if it's this dangerous, do I really want to bring friends up there? Do I want to risk them for my madness? Because I don't mind. So for any of you listening out there, I have a hard time gambling $5. But gambling my own life, I can take calculated risks. I don't have an issue with that. But gambling my money is hard. But gambling somebody else's life, somebody else's stuff, I have a really, really hard time asking somebody else to do that. So I was just, I think, mentioning, okay, I think I'm going to go up there. And all of a sudden, all this help jumping forward. And I couldn't say no because Melissa was right. She was very much a big proponent here. She was saying, look, you shouldn't be going up there. You're in bad air. There's so many things can go wrong if you're alone driving in there into the bush. So, it came together very, very quickly. And we've got some of our listeners here writing in that they had the smoke all the way down in Kentucky, David says.
Yep, that's crazy.
That's far.
That is far. I thought it was far getting to me, but getting all the way to Kentucky. Yikes.
Yeah. So that's the story of the cabin evac. I'm still dealing with the results of the cabin evac, distributing my things. Like I said, I'm not going to relocate up there for the nearest future for the simple reason that, and this is going to be a future prep for up there. I've realized the importance of being able to fight one's own fires if one is reliant on any kind of services that are volunteer based or at a distance. Right. So the next main prep item is going to be a suitable pump that can draw water from a pond about 75 to 100 yards away and provide firefighting capabilities. Because then I would feel a lot better about leaving more stuff up there. But again, 7 hours to get up makes it difficult to fight fire, right?
Sure does.
Yeah. So keep that in mind, all of you out there who want to go live off the grid. The ease with which your stuff can go quickly. It's hard to underscore that any further.
All right. Here's another question for you. Had you envisioned having to evacuate at any point from the cabin or made any previous plans, or was this all completely off the cuff? Let's go and just see what happens.
I had envisioned that I might have to at some point.
Yep.
And so I had an idea of what I might prioritize if I had to clear the most valuable items out. And that's mostly because I've moved so much in my life that I now have a bit of a system on how to move. Big and bulky things first, right? Big and bulky things first. And then you fill in the holes and you do what I call 3D Tetris. And I've gotten pretty good at doing that. And it turns out that Melissa and Pierre and my girlfriend are very good at it as well. So it didn't take us long to pack it up. The longest portion was me deciding what order to bring what out in.
Right.
And then making it work. And so that was a lot of fun. I would say that's the biggest consideration is having it planned up front. I had not pre-staged it to move it all, but because it happens to be a really small space, for space management purposes, a lot of my stuff was already in bins.
Hmm.
Some of those things were loose and sitting around, like my books.
Right.
So there was definitely some items that had to quickly be packed. But if you keep a lot of your stuff in bins, and this is not an unnatural proposition for someone who might live in cottage country or in a
Mhm.
rural environment where you do have mice, you do have.
I think I just lost Frugal.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back.
I think I dropped off there for a bit.
You did. And I
Oh,
awkwardly
no.
sat there for a second going, is it my internet or yours? Because I have no other panelists to validate what's
I
going
was
on right now.
I was also unsure there for a moment. So where did I cut out?
As you cut out where you're talking about bins and being in a rural community and not being odd for like cottage or rural living to help keeping the mice out and such.
Exactly. When you are building small cabins, when you're building in the bush, you do have all kinds of little mice. You got squirrels. You've got all kinds of little critters who are going to get into things. And so I had already taken the habit of storing a lot of my stuff in bins. So if that's something you already do, modularize your storage, then moving it out of there is a lot easier if you have to do it in an unprepared, quick manner, as I did. If you can manage to label your bins, that is even
Even
better.
better.
Yes. And
Yes.
the other thing I'll mention is cheap bins need not apply for this sort of stuff. I personally love Rubbermaid bins because they stand up to incredible levels of abuse.
Hmm.
In this case, I think we used a combination of those and some Costco bins. But don't cheap out on your bins when you're
Right.
storing in cottages, in sheds. Use the good stuff. They last under heat. They last under heavy
Right.
load, and the mice have a harder time getting through them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, is this going to change any of your plans or future way of doing things at the cabin once the fires kind of settle down and things get back under control? Are you changing anything, modifying anything? Or are you going to stay status quo? You think everything pretty much worked out the way you envisioned it and things are just going to stay in the bins and go back where they were?
That was another great question. So I'm probably going to be changing a lot of things as a result
Okay.
of this. Um, I have dreams of a moat, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know how I'm going to pull that off anytime soon, but
A fire break of some sort. Yeah.
some sort of fire break
Yep.
mechanism would be fantastic to work out. The other thing that I'm planning on doing is storage that is in ground. Storage
Ah,
that is in ground so that I don't concentrate all of my items in the cabin and maybe have them distributed over the property so that if there is a fire, I can have multiple fire breaks and therefore make it a little easier to maybe not lose everything in one fell swoop. So that would be a big one. And the other one, of course, is um, to further embrace the mobility concept that I've been floating around for quite some time.
yep.
If one is living completely mobile, then you don't have to have all your eggs in one basket, and you can just carry your basket with you or your baskets
Mhm.
with you. And so, more to follow on that. I'll be embracing
Nice.
that way of doing things so that I leave less of my items behind in areas that are so inaccessible.
I like it.
Yeah.
Always evolving. That's half the fun of this whole preparedness trip. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new to change or mix up. And it's usually based off of previous experience where you go, yeah, I came out of that all right. But,
Absolutely.
right?
But exactly. And that's a good habit to take. It's
Yep.
something that I did when I was a combat engineer a long time ago. Every time we took a vehicle out with a bunch of kit
Mhm.
for any kind of mission, and the missions would vary. We would have some that would go out, and we would have to have a blend of different gear and equipment because the and I don't want to get into too many specifics, but
Of course.
if you're doing mining and demining operations versus field construction versus demolition. Those are all different pieces of gear for all of those three activities.
Right.
And I'm transporting troops too. So I had to plan all that up front. And so, again, a lot of mobility, being modular in my mobility was a big part of our operational way of doing things. I'm going to try and bring that approach more into how I do things as well, so that I'm a little bit more vehicle based, but also have mobile and different areas of operations, because I got friends a little bit all over the place. So why not make use of that? Why not leave caches of gear with different friends, so that if something were to happen in this city, well, not all my stuff is in the city. Or if routes are cut off and I can't get to my one storage spot, well, that's okay. I still have stuff in other storage spots. So mobility as a concept also means having different caches, like the squirrel, right? The squirrel might have different spots to squirrel their stuff away, right? So I'm looking at different ways to deal with this stuff, because I'm not in the position to buy one big property and put everything there in one space yet. So maybe distribute it is the way to go. And the other useful way of doing that, or the other benefit of doing this, is if it's somewhere with somebody else and they all of a sudden are in a jam and need it, well, you can say, hey, remember that thing I got stored at your place? Go ahead and use it. So for example, right now I'm rolling with shovels and picks and all kinds of outdoor labor gear, right? And so I'm going to be able to help out a friend who's also getting his land set up. And so there's a benefit to being highly mobile and flexible in how you store your things. More to follow on this as I figure that out too.
I'm hearing a future episode emerge.
I think there very well will be. Yes.
I like it. No, this has been a good debrief, and lots of good lessons learned and some good information. And yeah, I think it definitely paints a good picture for people. This is the second episode now where we've done a debrief that has been wildfire related. We had one with Hughes there a couple of years ago where he had to evac his home, like his family from his home, and he had little to no time to do it. I think it was 10 minutes of a warning, and he had to get out. So if you go in the back catalog for that one, it's an interesting listen as well. We break down what went right and what went wrong for him, and now we've got your experience to go off of as well, where you're not at home at the time. You got to make that trip 7 hours to get to your location first to evac everything out. And it's a similar set of circumstances, but it's incredibly different at the same time. So a lot of things kind of cross as far as what was learned, but at the same time, there's a lot of differences. So it's neat to learn from experience like this.
This was an interesting one. I'd say if anything, it was a logistical challenge to do it all so quickly. But we pulled it all off incredibly. There also was some serendipity there in the timing. Some folks are blessed to be able to have some flexibility with work, and so that came into play as well. So it all worked out incredibly, and so very, very grateful. And if others can learn from this, well, it was very, very well worth sharing. It felt like it was all happening very quickly, I'll admit. But knowing that I had a number of go bags ready to go, knowing that I had a truck with all of my gear ready to go, meant that there was a lot of things that I didn't have to worry so much about, and I could focus on the logistics. So great benefit to emergency preparedness, because you've got that covered, especially if it's something you have rehearsed and done in the past.
It's testing your gear and knowing how to use it. Who'd have thunk?
Right? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. For example, I now know the feeling of when my truck is just slightly overloaded with a trailer. I know that feeling now. Yeah. So I can't say I have learned that before. You were about to say, Eric.
No, I was just going to say, if there's any kind of last minute things that you wanted to put out there to listeners, or any last minute experiences, or something we haven't touched on.
Oh, the one thing that I think we should underscore was how useful it is to know people who know more about you do, about things that you are not sure of, right? So
Fair.
this is why it's so important to have a mutual assistance group, or at least a network of relations, even if it's not
Yep.
a mutual assistance group, a network of relations that you curate and maintain.
Yep.
So, for example, I learned a lot of things about being prepared for an environment where there is fire present that I'd never known before prior to walking in. And it helped me feel way more
Right.
psychologically prepared going into it than not. So that was very, very helpful. So a big shout out here to Darius because he provided me with a lot of those tips. And the importance also of maintaining information sources. Thanks
Right.
to the Ontario Forest Fire Map and the Canada Smoke maps, we were able to confirm that, yeah, okay, this is definitely the smoke from the fires, and it gave us an idea of what we were up against in terms of the environmentals. So communications and maintaining high awareness of environment where you've got access to information or are able to get information thrown your way. Like in my case, we were able to get updates as we were driving up there. We were able to get updates on the weather and what
Yep.
was coming, and that was
Yep.
huge, huge intel.
Yep.
One thing that we see in movies all the time is we always see that military unit or that military individual running out there, and they're able to do incredible things. And why are they able to do those incredible things? Because they have an entire support network behind them. They have transport, they've got comms, they've got alternates, they've got all kinds of ways to back them up. And that's why they're able to operate like that. And that's
Yep.
what this was. I had
Yep.
all kinds of people able to back me up. And so it left me free to plan the logistics and focus on getting the gear out. And that was just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of hits home the message that we try to push on the podcast a lot as well, is you can't know everything, and you got to be okay with that. Right? You
Oh,
got to
yes.
be able to let go of the stuff that you don't know and be comfortable with knowing that somebody else can back you up on it. But you got to have those people in your group ahead of something happening and be confident that they're going to be able to back you up, because you gotta be comfortable with the people in your network, but you got to be comfortable with letting that go and be like, okay, I'm going to focus on the logistics. You focus on the weather. You focus on roads. You focus on getting us some comms, right? It's an important lesson to learn. And some people have a hard time letting go of the I don't know everything and letting other people help. So that's an important thing to take away from this experience, and kind of let everybody else know that, at times it's okay to not know. You can't know everything. That's why you got to rely on other people. Right?
That's a huge takeaway, Eric.
Yep.
I can't stress it enough. There's always a limit to our individual knowledge. And if you're not ready to know where that is and know when, okay, I really don't know, but hey, this person that's telling me this or this information comes from somebody who does know,
Yep.
well, you've got to know when you can rely on that and trust on
Mhm.
that. And it's better than working with your innate information, which could be completely wrong or non-existent.
Mhm. Yep.
So yeah, very, very amazing to have a good group of people around you to, throw in some tips like the ones I received. So it was really, really amazing. Melissa says there's no stupid questions. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I come up with all of them all the time, and I always have more. And so it's just amazing when others can just volunteer it before I even know that I need to ask the question. Other people are
Yep.
giving me those answers. I loved that. That just
Yep.
made my week. I was able to
Yep.
just focus on, okay, what am I getting out of there? What's my priorities? And then getting up there. So, yeah, huge
It's
success.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, like I said, it's an awesome experience. It's too bad that the fires were that close to the cabin, and the fact that we have to debrief an evac like this. But the amount of knowledge and experience that we can gain out of it, always take a bad situation and turn it positive, right? So it's good that we've
Definitely.
been able to get some positive out of it, and it sounds like everything worked out as well, which is good. Is
The
there
one
still a danger to the cabin, or have things kind of subsided?
The fire risk has been downgraded in the overall area. Again, there's still that fire burning about 50K away as the crow flies, but with the overall risk being downgraded, that tells me that they've had enough rainfall that they're not concerned about embers and all that picking up again. This doesn't mean yet I'm ready to drop everything back into place. In fact, big learning experience for me here is that if it's more than an hour away, I want it to be distributed so that I can't lose it all to any one environmental disaster. So look to me talking more about distributing my eggs across multiple baskets and how that looks and how that works out. Because that's going to be the takeaway from this. Awesome. Gary T has a good question here about what the area I'm talking about. So the area where my cabin is between Kirkland Lake and Englehart in northern Ontario. So it's about 3 hours north of North Bay, about an hour south of Timmins. It's in the middle of nowhere.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, like I said, it's been a great debrief, and I think we've covered off some good topics. So with that, I'll move us along into the podcast challenge. So our challenge for this episode is come up with an evacuation plan for your location, whether it be your residence, a cabin, you happen to have both, but put your mind to an evacuation plan of some sort, and maybe do a dry run. I'm not saying you have to clear your house out of all the contents and actually pack up the trailers and all that, but just dry run it and say, okay, this has happened. I have to get here. What am I taking out ahead of time? And just putting yourself mentally through that practice, you'd be amazed at how much it would help if you actually end up in that situation. So just dry run an evac plan, or even just put something down on paper, or run through that process of what you would do, when you would do it, why you would do it, and just have it in the back of your mind.
Great challenge.
Upcoming events. We're blank for this episode. The annual Preppers Meet happened this past weekend. I was unfortunately not in attendance this year. It's one of the first years I've missed in quite a few, but I had some stuff going on in the personal life that I had to attend to, so I was not able to make it out to that. So, but I hear that it went off quite well and was well received. And we'll have Terry on to do a debrief of the annual Preppers Meet from 2023 in a couple of episodes. So we'll hear all about it and all the fun stuff that I missed out on.
Looking forward to hearing him.
So that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
This is about the time that we get into Jeff's weather blurb, but I think he's probably praying to the porcelain god somewhere. So he's going to keep saying that it's the microphone that's the issue, but it's worked for every other episode he's been on except tonight. So,
oh, poor Jeff.
Yeah, poor Jeff. You're getting the rosin tonight, Jeff.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'll bring episode number 208 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Submit a review. It does help other people find us. And we record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click on the notifications tab. That will give you a little heads up when we go live. Where can everybody get you, Frugal?
Well, you can find me on the YouTubes, on the Facebook, on Instagram, and even on the Canadian Prepper Podcast Discord.
Look at that. And I put the link in the chat there for the Discord for those of you that were asking for it.
Wonderful.
So you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com and get me there on the live chat. You can also email feedback at prepperpodcast.ca. Thanks for joining us this evening. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.